Well, welcome back to Mr. Obsolete's Vintage Homesteading. Today we're going to be talking about getting ready for winter because it's right around the corner. We've already had storms and a couple of small power outages, and so I'm going to be talking about when the power goes out, when it's dark, what the first thing we need is light. So what we're going to be talking about today is kerosene lanterns, and so we'll talk about how much light they put out, different types, and just a good overview on them, how to service them and whatnot. So anyway, this here is about the minimum. That's a little bitty rascal, as you can see, and light output on it is 1 to 2 candle power. Candle power is an obsolete term anymore. They use lumens, but there's a conversion chart, and I can talk about that in a different video. But anyway, these you can see enough, if you're in the house and you got to walk over to the table or go with the can or something like that, that'll give you enough light to see what you're doing so you don't trip, but not much more. Okay, well, like I say, this is an absolute minimum of a lantern. So they come in different sizes. So this would be a medium size. And these would be used like if you lived in a log cabin or something like that. You could see around the cabin and moving around and stuff. You could probably sit down and eat by it, but it's not very good. It doesn't have a whole lot of output. It's a 3 to 5 candle power. So I'll move up to a large. Now this would be something that in a cabin you would hang it up and you could see. Most cabins are pretty small, but you could see around the whole area. And also if you had critters and you wanted to go out and milk the cows or attend to feeding the critters or whatever like that, you'd want something like this. And these are an 8 to 14 candle power. So anyway, that's the different sizes and amount of lights they put out. So we'll talk about the different types that they are. Each one has its advantages and disadvantages. These are the most common and put out the most light, and these are what's called a cold blast. And this is called a hot blast. And the thing that they do is they don't put out as much light as the cold blast ones, but they burn cleaner. And so we'll talk about that. So we'll start off with an early one like this one. Okay, well, we're going to talk about the different types of lanterns. This is what's called a hot blast. And they were patented and put into production in 1869. And the very earliest lanterns didn't have these tubes and whatnot on them. They were what's called a zero blast. And that refers to the air coming in around the burner here. So in a hot blast lantern like this one, once it's lit, the heat and the exhaust comes up, and some of it's captured in this tube here. And since heat rises and stuff, it creates a vacuum down under by the burner, and some of the unburnt fuel air mixture comes back in as reburnt. So it burns really clean, but it doesn't put out a whole lot of light. So the next generation is what's called a cold blast lantern. They look similar, but they're different. The tops are totally different. This one has an actual chimney in it, and then the same type of operation as far as once you light it, the heat rises and it's funneled down through this chimney here in the center, and then this area here is open and lets colder air be drawn in, and it's drawn down through these tubes. There again, the burnt fuel and air mixture rising up creates a vacuum and then it pulls in the air. The one thing too, you'll notice on the globes here, they're tapered. And the reason for that is a venturi, just like in a carburetor. The air comes into the front of it and then it goes down through a smaller area. What that does is it speeds up the air, and so this does the same thing. So once it builds the heat down here and it rises, it comes closer and stuff and speeds it up, and then that gives you your draw, your vacuum draw here to pull in the cold air or the hot air like in this one. Okay, now we're going to talk about how to service these. So here you have a little lever you lift up. This tips out. You can remove the globe. It also gives you access down here to light the burner. And put this back here. And when you first light them, you want to start with a small flame, because as soon as you get them burning and stuff, and it starts the vacuum and heat rising and stuff, it'll pull the flame up a lot. So if you have a wick up high and it smokes a lot, of course it's going to dirty your chimney. So anyway, they're just quick little service tips. And then here, when you want to service the wick, this has a little cage here that you lift up. It's stuck, but there we go, wrong way. Service these, you can lift this up and then you have access here to the wick. Now the wick on here, you can see that, I'll roll it up, you can see that it's all spread out and crappy. And it looks like new down here, so it's still good even though it's fairly short. But first thing you want to do when you have a bad edge like that is take a pair of scissors and cut it off. Okay, well, we want to just have a nice clean square cut, just like that. So once you get a nice clean cut like that, what that does, the surface is the same all the way across, and you're going to have a perfect flame. If this is ragged like I showed it when I first took it, it'll have hot spots in it and it'll release particulate and stuff like that, which is not good for you. So anyway, put this back together here. This squeezes down in there, and that just snaps down. Just go back down like that. Tilt that out. Put your globe in and ready to light. Well, the other part of servicing a lantern is replacing the wick when they're worn out. And so here's a brand new wick, and you can see it's got lots of little flaws on it. It's all shredded up at the top, and this one just, I don't think I'd use this one. It's not very good. It's not finished. It wasn't sewn properly. But anyway, they come in different sizes for the different lanterns. So we got a little bitty one for this, and medium for this, and big one for the bigger lanterns. And here's a really good wick here. There again, a little bit of fuzz here on the bottom. It needs to be squared off. Sometimes when you go to install these into a lantern through the burner there, sometimes these wicks are a little bit hard to get started, and so what I do is I take and cut a little bevel on each edge like that, and then make sure it's square across the top, and so you get a nice, it rolls in really easy, a nice little deal, and it gives you a perfect flame too when it's burning. So when you put these in and they're soaking in the oil, whatever you're using, kerosene or oil, it takes about half hour for them to soak all the way through. And a lot of times if I put a new wick in, I'll lift up get the burner, run the wick up, and dab a little oil to soak it down from the top and the bottom both, and it speeds up the process. So now we'll talk about the cold blast. And this one, like I say, the chimney has to come up like that. Then the globe comes out. You see the burner right here. And to service this one, this just moves. There's a little cam and a couple of ears there. And so that's real easy. You can see the wick is pretty short, but still adequate to work. So just lock it back in. Pull up the chimney. Put your globe back in. There again, you're all set. And then, of course, when you want to light it, this one has a lever so you can get in here to the burner. Anyway, that's the different types, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about emissions. People are all freaked out about emissions these days and the type of fuels. So, okay, well, a lot of people concerned about emissions. and rightly so. But there again, the type of lantern is going to make a difference. You know, these were all used kerosene originally. And the problem with the kerosene is it doesn't burn as clean as more modern fuels. It stinks, and puts out good light and heat though. But you know, log cabins and early houses and stuff were pretty drafty, so it wasn't that much of a concern. And so anyway, kerosene has a drawback. It has particulate that comes out, has a small amount of carbon monoxide, and also carbon dioxide, and a few other little things that are not good for you, but they're again very small amounts. And so lantern fuels were developed over time, and so the best one after kerosene is paraffin. And paraffin is basically like kerosene. It's just light oil, but it's more purified and burns a whole lot cleaner and doesn't have any smell, doesn't really have any particulate, and the amount of carbon monoxide it puts out is absolutely minimal. And so, and then the last one that they have is super refined, and there's paraffin again, but it's super refined. And you can, it says right on the bottle, it can use inside or outside, it doesn't matter. The emissions are really low. So anyway, anytime you use these anywhere, you should still have a little bit of ventilation, especially in kerosene, because you have the stink, and it's best not to use it in the house. But paraffin and lamp oil, refined lamp oil and stuff are fine, just as long as you have a little bit of ventilation. So anyway, we'll call that good for today. And so there you know all about lanterns. And when we come back, our next video or so, we'll talk about the other thing you need when the lights are out, and that's heat. So vintage lanterns are great. We'll see you on the next exciting vintage video.